the mass shootings at Oxford High School and more recently at Michigan State University, plus countless others across the nation, all leading to this. Governor Gretchen Whitmer signing sweeping new laws she says will get guns out of the hands of people who can do harm.
Extreme risk protection orders, we have a mechanism to step in and save lives.
But for as much support as there's been, there's also pushback. One Metro Detroit sheriff says he won't enforce them, and that county declaring itself a constitutional county, saying it won't support laws they think violate the Second Amendment. So how much wiggle room do prosecutors and sheriffs really have? And what will this law actually do? The debate starts right now. Time now to let it rip. Two all-star panels tonight on this topic. In studio with us is Black Bottom Gun Club President Chad King, Washtenaw County Prosecutor Haley Savit, Brenden Boudreau with the National Association for Gun Rights, and live from D.C., Congresswoman Haley Stevens, and of course the one and only Fox 2 anchor and attorney who's running and gunning from the streets of Metro Detroit back to Studio A here for an important discussion. The governor, of course, signed into law this important bill that many people will say will help prevent people from dying. Chad King, your thoughts about what the governor signed. Is this going to help?
I don't know that it will. I do understand some of the rationales to why it may have been signed. I think if the end result is to save lives, then I can understand that being the impetus for signing it. However, I do believe that it's wrong. It's the wrong thing to do. It's wrong-headed because it abdicates responsibility. It abdicates the political responsibility to address the root causes that are much further upstream than the piece of metal or plastic or taking away someone's rights. And so that for me is the major problem that I have with it. Additionally, I think that there are issues with the enforcement of it. I don't know, and I cannot trust, and I know there are several people that won't trust how it will be enforced. Will it be equitably enforced? Right now, in the states that do have red flag laws, we have 90% of red flag warrants that are issued are instituted or are requested by law enforcement. I think this will disproportionately impact poor people and disproportionately impact those who are of marginalized or minority communities.
That's an important point that we want to get right to. Congresswoman Haley Stevens, Congresswoman from D.C., this legislation some people are calling knee-jerk. They're saying that this will disproportionately affect low-income folks. In fact, I know in some of the states that actually did this, they talked about a 90% rate at which judges were saying, yes, we have to do this, but only 80% of the people didn't have attorneys in these low-income neighborhoods, so it just is taking guns away arbitrarily. Do you believe that?
Well, let's start at the top. This has been an incredibly historic week in Michigan, and my colleagues in the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force were applauding our governor, our lieutenant governor, our attorney general, and recognizing signing that bill in Royal Oak, Michigan, alongside State Senator Mallory McMorrow and Oakland County's treasurer, Robert Wittenberg, who years and years ago, when he was in the state house, he authored this legislation. So this isn't knee-jerk. Many have been working on this for a long time, and I have trust and faith in our speaker, our state house speaker, Joe Tate, who reconciled, I think, some of the inequity challenges and making sure, right, that we have proper criminal justice that isn't just targeting one segment of our population. We are obviously in Michigan reeling from the aftermath of Oxford and what happened at MSU, but also every other day suicides that are happening. The number one killer of kids in the United States of America is guns.
But Congresswoman, you mentioned Oxford, Congresswoman, excuse me for interrupting, but I want to get to some really important points here. Oxford, and you look at Ethan Crumbley, you look at his parents. Who would have helped if this law was in place in Michigan during that time to stop Ethan Crumbley from doing what he did?
4 precious lives at Oxford High School, students who I marched with when they were in middle school, who were in that high school when this happened, traumatized individuals, educators. And so, yes, there's extreme risk protection orders, but there's now also safe storage, Rube. This is a major triumph, and we can lower these indicators. We can lower these instances. I got a stack of letters sitting on my desk.
But would this have taken the gun away? Would this have taken the gun away from Ethan Crumbley? If this law was in place in the state of Michigan, would Ethan Crumbley's gun not have been in his hands that morning? That's the question that we're asking.
Well, I certainly can't speak to those specific circumstances, but what I do know is laws that require people to lock up their guns and require parents to lock up their guns may have made a difference. We cannot go back in time, Rube. You and I know this.
Congresswoman Stevens,
my goodness gracious.
We're going to be talking to you more about this. We're going to talk to you more about this in just a moment here. Let's get right to Mr. Boudreau, Brenden Boudreau. This is an important topic. Livingston County's prosecutor says, you know what, I'm not going to enforce this. Is that the best way to just say I'm not going to enforce it if indeed it could save lives? You hear the Congresswoman saying this could save lives. Why would we do anything less than what they're saying to help save lives?
Well, I think what we've seen with the red flag laws that have actually passed across this country is that it's a mix of results at best. And I think that it's reasonable for prosecutors and for sheriffs and law enforcement to ask the question, is this worth trampling on half the Bill of Rights? There are serious due process concerns with these laws. There's actually 2 rulings that have come out of New York State now from their Supreme Court who have ruled against red flag laws because of the due process violations that these laws have. And New York's law is very similar to what Michigan just passed. And it's interesting that one of the cases that's actually working through the courts there is a case exactly what we're concerned about, is a red flag law being abused. It's a boyfriend using a red flag law to disarm an ex-girlfriend. And now we're working through the court system to make sure that she has her rights back.
So let's talk about the specifics of how that works. In Michigan right now, the way the law is, and Charlie, I want to bring you in this one. I want to talk to Allie real quick here as a prosecutor in Washtenaw County. Could this be used as retaliation from one family member to another? If someone is angry or upset at their loved one, maybe an estranged spouse, someone they're not happy with, and they say, hey, this guy's a danger, boom, the gun's taken away. Are you worried about that?
You know, I'm not particularly worried about it, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it is true that family members, intimate partners, spouses can file for an order under the red flag law, but that's because oftentimes those folks are in the best position to know if a loved one or, you know, a former dating partner is dealing with a mental health crisis, right? Has been making threats, has been Googling, and this is a great example of where the red flag law can be used, has been Googling how to shoot up a school. I want to be clear, there's nothing to prosecute if you're just Googling that, right? But I think everybody can agree that's a red flag, and if you know that, then you can file for a order under the red flag law. Now, you asked about retaliation, and look, you know, this is something that could come up in any context in the legal system. Somebody can always file a lawsuit that's improper, but we rely on judges who are neutral arbiters to issue the final ruling. That's what this red flag law does. And in addition, I'll note that there are criminal penalties for making a false statement in support of an application under the red flag law.
Charlie, in Florida, only law enforcement officers can petition a court for this type of activity. Is that the way to go?
No, not necessarily. I agree, I think, with Allie saying that the best people that are in the position to know if someone has a mental illness is someone that's very close to the people. Here's the thing, I think everyone on this panel, agrees that somebody with a mental illness should not have a gun. Done. The issue is, how do we prevent that? What is the best way to take away the guns from someone that shouldn't have them without trampling on their rights? And if we're talking about due process, I think we have to let this play out. I think we have to rely on a judge to make a decision that is going to be in the best interest of the overall situation. If we equate this with PPOs, there could be a lot of abuse on PPOs. If I don't like you and you're my neighbor, sure, I'm going to file a PPO. Well, we have to rely that and trust that judges are going to do the right thing. And I think we have to give this time to see how this works now. You have a right to a hearing. You'll have a right to state your case. It may be difficult for people, but I do think that we have to let this play out.
Congresswoman, I want to get back to that point about what's going on in Southwest Florida right now. 80% of the people who were involved with this red flag law in Florida didn't have lawyers, but judges took away guns 90% of the time. Don't you think that's an injustice to people who just don't have money?
Well, I think there are a lot of injustices going on in Florida, and certainly there's a failure of leadership taking place there right now. And as a national lawmaker, I'd like to remind everybody that we passed in a bipartisan way last year, just under a year ago, a bipartisan common sense gun safety package that does what? almost $1 billion allocated across the states to properly implement these red flag laws, extreme risk protection order laws. And I know under State Representative Kelly Breen's leadership on the Judiciary Committee, they analyzed this, they went through this, they held committee hearings. And so those dollars that we're now going to allocate at the federal level that Michigan now qualifies for because we have those monies, this is going to ensure equity. This is going to ensure fairness. And, Mr. Boudreau is talking about rights. We have rights to make sure that people can live peacefully. A Buffalo shooting, people of color being attacked, students in Uvalde, children. I have letters on my desk from teachers, from students saying, please do something. The urgency for families is palpable. It is unacceptable. 6 countries issued warnings about coming to the United States because of our gun violence problem. We got to do something.
And so, Chad, one of the things people are saying you got to do is make sure this law is enforced the right way. And they're saying the governor did the right thing. Look, you look at Florida as a state on both sides that conservatives can tout as being, very conservative, doing the right thing. And then some people are saying, look, their red flag law is working, including in one case in October, a 17-year-old student threatened to kill a bunch of students at Siegel Alternative High School. And he threatened to do it, and the red flag law stopped him from doing it. If one school shooting is prevented, isn't a law like this worth it?
No, and I'll say it this way. I think that all of us will agree that we are steadfastly against the criminal misuse of firearms, right? I think that all of us will agree as well that we want to make sure that all of our rights are held safe, and everyone can exercise those rights in the way that they deem fit to, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of other people. Where the red flag law, what that does, it abdicates and tramples on the Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. And so if you're talking about one law that is going to disenfranchise people, I have a problem with that.
Ellie, 5 separate amendments, he said, are violated over here. You're a prosecutor right there in Washtenaw County. You don't see any of that?
No, I disagree with that. There is due process baked into this law. Again, there's hearings. A judge has to decide that you pose a risk to yourselves or others, and that's the process that you get in the PPO process. That's the process you get in civil confinement laws. There is no due process problem here. And 21 states now have red flag laws, and the only court that has questioned it, he mentioned it's the Supreme Court of New York. That's right, Supreme Court is the trial level court of New York. It's not the highest court in the land. So we've got one trial court from across the United States of America that has actually even questioned the constitutionality of these laws.
Brenden, we only have a few seconds left. You willing to see if this works, and are you hopeful that this will prevent someone from getting hurt?
No, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going to. I think we've seen just in the last year several states that have passed red flag laws who are still having these incidents happen. And again, I agree with Chad. We're trampling over several constitutionally protected rights. And the issue about due process, the judges in New York said that there's more due process in the mental health system than there is. There's more due process rights for a 48-hour hold, whereas you're losing gun rights for weeks possibly under red flag laws.
An important discussion that we're going to continue. I want to thank Brenden Boudreau, Haley Savit, Chad King, and of course Congresswoman Haley Stevens for joining us from Washington. Thank you for being a part of this very critical discussion. The conversation is not over. After the break, we're joined by a prosecutor from the other side of the political aisle, as well as an activist in the faith-based community, to talk about the impact these new laws should have. That debate when we come back. Keeping the conversation going on the new red flag law in our state with Macomb County Prosecutor Pete Lucido and Episcopal Diocese of Michigan Bishop Bonnie Perry, and of course Fox 2 anchor and attorney Charlie Langton. Thank you all for joining us today. Let's begin with the bishop. You heard over and over again in the first part of our discussion about how this is a violation of the Second Amendment. Do you see any credence to that? Do you see how that could be true?
You know, I'm the daughter of a Marine Lieutenant Colonel. I honor the Second Amendment, and what I'm really clear about as a person of faith is I have seen a number of people who are dying senselessly and needlessly, and it is clear to me that the red flag laws are going to be able to stop some of that. Not all of it, but they're going to be able to stop some of it. I think there's due process. I believe the prosecutor. I think that we've got that in place. And I believe this is a step to take because, quite frankly, I am tired of burying children. The #1 cause of death right now in the state of Michigan and in our country are firearms for our kids. We can do better, and I think this is a start.
Prosecutor Lucido, you hear this rally cry all the time from so many people who say, hey, we got to do more. And then you hear Republicans say mental health, mental health, mental health. But what about the guns? Isn't there something that can be done to help prevent even one person from dying?
Law-abiding citizens follow the law. Criminals break the law. The guns are plentiful because we are a nation of dollars here in America. So we're selling more guns to this country than any other country. Check the numbers. In addition, the ones that we have coming through the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, these are felons carrying these weapons. But we have adult protective services that have been around, Roop, for years. And we should be utilizing that telephone when a family member, a loved one that would know about mental health issues, call Adult Protective Services, ask them at that time, we need to go remove the gun, and they'll bring the police out there. That should have been and could have been and is in place for years.
You're shaking your head, Bishop.
Yeah, no, because I have parishioners and they had triplets. And Karen was calling the police and saying that her child had issues and that she should not have her guns. And the police said, we cannot do anything about it. And they wouldn't take the guns.
Charlie,
and
a police officer can't remove the gun necessarily without...
Now they can.
Well, now under this law, but I'm saying before that.
This law would prevent 3 people are now dead. And this is a woman and a father and mother who are missing 2 out of their 3 kids.
So adult protective services, why can't they just do the job that this law is doing? Charlie, is there a reason?
You mean Adult Protective Services? I mean,
so taking a gun away.
Well, so if I think you have mental health, an issue, I can now, and you have a gun, I can do 2 things. I can go and get a red flag law, an order, and remove your guns, but I can also do a commitment hearing, and I can commit you, assuming all the factors play out. I do think that we should think about commitments as opposed to use that more. It's the people we're talking about here. And we're talking about you have to prove that the person is not capable of having a gun. Well, if that's the case, if they have mental illness, let's commit that person. Let's get that person the help they need. The gun, to me, is secondary. And I think that we've got other issues to deal with, the police, and there's logistics, and there could be some due process and time. But let's get this help the person.
In Florida, the only person who can do this is someone who's in law enforcement. Here in Michigan, under this law now, you're saying a family member could do this. And Bishop,
we're not.
There's some concern.
She made those calls over and over again. They made the calls.
Do you think that this can be abused by a family member who's upset or angry at a loved one?
100%.
100%. I want the bishop to be able to have a chance to answer that. Do you think that could be a problem?
I think it is possible. And I believe this is also another avenue for saving people, right? I mean, I'm also thinking about folks. I had one of my clergy colleagues, really dear friend, took their own life by gun.
Yeah.
Right? This is a way, these are times when people are in crisis. And if we can intervene for a moment, then we can change that. Right? Using guns is so effective.
7 months ago,
Yeah.
in a state far away in Florida, a 17-year-old planned on shooting up a school called Siegel Alternative High School, Prosecutor Lucido. This is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Because of the red flag law, even the conservative judge there said it was because of that law that 17-year-old was unable to shoot up a school. If we can prevent one school shooting, isn't that enough to have this law in place?
It's always enough. It's always enough. It's timing with anything. If we would have had an assessment done on the shooter at MSU, we would have had a chance to review that he was suffering from depression because of the loss of his mother, and we would have had a chance to correct that. Maybe all of these individuals need to be assessed when a family member makes that statement. But taking a gun out of there is a good start, and I agree with the bishop. It's not the be-all, end-all. We need to remove the person that has the mental illness from the home. Because if they have 400 guns, I'm going to tie up a lot of resources. And isn't the person that's in possession of the weapon, if we take the person out, we've just eliminated anybody using that gun. But I didn't hear that as part of the bill.
And that's where we have this issue that we hear a lot of the rally cry from the other side, Bishop, saying we have to do more with mental health.
Well,
this state is lacking in mental health facilities.
We do have to do more with mental health, and each time it comes up to be funded, the legislature, prior to the current one, voted against it. Voted against expanding Medicaid. Voted against the Affordable Care Act, expanding Medicaid, which is where most of the mental health funding
Prosecutor
is.
Lucido, do you think it's a little bit interesting or ironic or strange that sometimes it's Republican lawmakers who aren't doing more when it comes to reinstating mental health institutions in this state when it was a Republican governor named Governor Engler in the 90s who shut them down?
So why didn't we get it done last term of the Democratic governor? She has now the House and the Senate.
But it was divided.
But whoa.
Right? It was divided.
Here's what the reality is. If we do Medicaid expansion more and more, let's make sure that the money is going to where it's supposed to go. And I didn't hear that from the bishop. I wish I did, to hear, let's narrowly define it into law where it's going and what it's going to pay for.
But how are you going to do this?
That's the benefit.
Let's take a situation. Someone is depressed. They have a gun. Yeah. You get a red flag law. The cops go in there and remove the guns. That person is still depressed, right? And now what do you do to that person? Can they go out the next day and get another gun?
Absolutely, Charlie. And that's the problem.
Well, what do you do, though?
Here, the reason the person has the mental illness or is at least depressed is because maybe they need medication. Maybe they need to have some counseling done in there. Maybe they need to be separated from the family that may be causing this. I don't hear that. What I hear is, take the guns out.
Expanding Medicaid to take care of those people
for mental illness? Absolutely.
You would.
100%.
Well, he's no longer a member of the legislature, but he's a prosecutor. Here to say that now.
Because I'll tell you,
what was this thought when you're a legislator?
The reality is, we see wasted dollars on a lot of things. This is not a waste when it's spent appropriately and evenly. Remember, Roop, those that do not have should be given the help. When you take a gun and you don't have a lawyer, it's a property taking. You're still going to have to hire a lawyer.
So now that we know that mental health is obviously one of the big things that we have to address here, and I hear you saying that, why isn't the Republican side of this legislature doing more to rush some stuff in there to get some help?
I can't answer that. I'm not there. I'm in here right now talking to you about
you would call
the
on
mental health
that, right?
issue about taking a gun from somebody mentally ill. I wouldn't want to be that police officer knocking on that door saying, I'm here to take your guns.
But the difference is we have the same level of mental health illness in our country as other countries do in the world. What we have is the difference is the ready access to guns. Mm-hmm. That is the difference.
Would you ban all guns?
No.
So
absolutely. Are you kidding? Have you been on 96? I do not want any more deers on the front of the hood of my Buick.
You're all for the hunting. You don't care about that.
Shoot the deer.
Happy
but Bishop,
to have the deer dead.
There is an actual civil liberties issue here that many people are saying is not being addressed, and that is the access to legal help when someone comes after you and your guns. If we know in Southwest Florida that 80% of the people whose guns were taken away didn't have lawyers, and yet there was a 90% rate in which judges took them away, that's a huge disparity, and that just isn't fair, and it's un-American, many would argue. Wouldn't you
need
agree
more
with that?
lawyers, apparently.
Well, apparently in that area.
Numbers will go down.
Well, affordable lawyers, right? But Bishop, do you see that? Do you see the civil liberties issue here?
I can see it, and this is what I know, is that in another congregation, friends, these are 3 congregations in the last 8 months. In another congregation, someone called and said, the husband of so-and-so just shot her. He's a convicted felon. There was a gun in the house, and now she's dead. Right? If we could have the way to get in and to stop this, then more people, I know this sounds simplistic, friends, but more people would be alive. And as a person of faith, this feels like a simple choice to me. I need folks breathing.
That is something that I think everybody agrees on. How to get there is a different stance depending on who you speak with. Bishop and Mr. Lucido, we're going to be back on the other side of this break with some final thoughts. Final thoughts, Pete Lucido.
You know, everybody has a solution, but we haven't tested this solution just yet. I know time is going to tell, and I would hope that we would remove the person that is the problem, and the weapons would remain so that it wouldn't cost resources and time so much. But let's stop the gun violence, please, once and for all.
Prosecutor Lucido, thank you always for your time and your passion to want to do the right thing. We appreciate seeing you here today.
Yeah.
Bishop.
I very much agree with the prosecutor. Let's stop the gun violence. Let's stop that. Let's keep our people alive, and then we can work on moving forward with this.
I agree with everybody. Stop the gun violence.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Be kinder, be better to one another in any way possible. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Let It Rip.